On New Year's Day, people all over Philadelphia were glued to the news, following the case of a young child with autism who had gone missing during a family party. The weather was frigid, and the 5-year-old had wandered from his house, barefoot, with no coat, carrying his iPad. Crews and volunteers combed the area tirelessly, but 2 days later, a reporter delivered news that, deep down, I already knew. They had discovered his body caught under the surface of a nearby creek, his iPad laying on the banks. He was gone. While locals prayed and mourned at a candlelight vigil, observers weighed in online with their opinions. Where were the parents of this child? How is the child with special needs able to sneak out of a house? What kind of parent would let this happen? As I read these comments, I wanted to reach through the computer screen to shake these people. I wanted them to stop judging the parents of this child and try to simply grieve with them. I wanted to get through all of the I would nevers and how could yous, because although my ending was different, I am the kind of parent who would let that happen. When you join Club Motherhood, you live on the edge of worry. When your membership extends and you become the parent of a child with autism, the edge is razor sharp, the worry intense. No matter how connected I feel to my son, there's a barrier there that keeps me from fully understanding what is happening in his mind. Despite my vigilance, despite my worry and watching, I am always aware that there is a very real danger that, without any warning or provocation, my son could suddenly be in harm's way. And yet, I still believe that I could protect my child. I convinced myself that I was too helicoptery for him to come to any harm on my watch. It was Memorial Day and hot outside. Summer was right around the corner. My husband, Pete, was getting ready to head to the fire department, where he serves as a volunteer. Each year, Pete and his fellow firefighters take part in a community Memorial Day service. This year, we decided that I would stay home with our 5-year-old son, PJ, and bring him up to the firehouse after the ceremony for the celebration. PJ and I were still in our pajamas as Pete got himself into his dress uniform and headed out the door, reassuring our son that Mommy would be bringing him to the firehouse later so he could see the trucks. After Pete left, I decided to do some laundry. PJ was happily playing with his trains on the living room floor, so I told him Mommy was going to do the laundry, that I'd be right back, and I headed down to the basement. It took 2, maybe 3 minutes to fill the washer, switch it on, and come back upstairs, but when I did, PJ wasn't in the living room anymore. I checked his room, not there. I called his name, but because autism leaves PJ with stunted verbal skills, I was not surprised when he didn't answer my call. He often doesn't. I figured he was in the bathroom. I'd once searched the house frantically, only to find the poor kid quietly trying to take a dump in private. But this time, he wasn't there. I felt a small ribbon of panic wind its way around my heart. I looked in our bedroom, in the kitchen, in the closets. He wasn't there, but there was no way he could be gone. Was there? He had never even tried to leave the house before. I went outside to look. He wasn't in the backyard. I walked around front and found a clump of neighbors chatting. They assured me that if they had been outside for a while and would have noticed if PJ, bright blonde and in his pajamas, had wandered by. My worry that PJ might have ventured out into the busy street was calmed for the time being, but where was he? The ribbon of panic was now a rope, choking the life of me as I tore our apartment apart for places PJ might be hiding. Now, I noticed how still the house felt, and it only took a few more moments to know with certainty. He was gone. I flew back outside to my neighbors, my eyes full of tears and my voice floating outside of my body. I can't find him, I screeched. I could hear my cry like an alarm, thin and wailing. I struggled to get a hold of myself. I think he left the house. My neighbors, bless them forever, calmly took action. Let's go find him, one of the women said. Since it was unlikely they would have missed him had he come from the front of the house, we all headed to the backyard. By then, PJ had been missing for 20 minutes. I'm calling the police, I shouted to my neighbors. I was halfway up the stairs to my apartment when my neighbor shouted, he's here, I have him, he's here. Where, I screamed, tumbling back down the stairs to get to my son. As it turns out, PJ was in my car, buckled into his seat, waiting to go to the firehouse. Eager to see the fire trucks, he must have decided to follow Pete. He'd left the house, gone to my car, opened the door, climbed into his seat, and buckled up. But once buckled, he was stuck there, still smiling, waiting patiently for me to take him to the firehouse. My white-hot panic flew to the surface in a rush, and I sobbed as I unbuckled him from his seat. PJ was at first bewildered by my emotional outburst and then upset about it, launching into a meltdown. My crying was too much for his struggling sensory receptors to process. He pulled my hair and scratched at my face, trying desperately to tell me to calm down, but I couldn't pull myself together. I knew I should walk away, but I couldn't let him out of my sight. Instead, not willing to release him from my arms, I let him yank handfuls of my hair until I was finally able to breathe. I have thought 1,000 times of what could have gone wrong. The gift of PJ coming back to me, safe and whole, was 10 minutes away from turning sour. If my neighbor hadn't found him, I was going to call the police, not knowing that PJ was inside of a black car on a day that was rapidly heating up. If he hadn't been able to get into the car, would he have just wandered away? Would I have found him? Others have lost their wandering child to the elements, to the bottom of a river or worse, and I can barely breathe my thanks to God for letting me keep my son. Those 20 minutes changed me forever. My heart bears very permanent scars of guilt and bruises of fear. My edge of worry remains razor sharp. The grace I received that morning when I found PJ safe and sound did nothing to dull it. I know that despite all of the precautions I took before this happened, and despite all of the precautions I've taken since, there is a very real risk that PJ could wander away from me again. So, for those who wonder what kind of parent can let this happen, now you know. I am.